Okay, so I have a couple of questions before we get started. First, are there any other Aprils in the room? Really? I knew it was you. I thought Al might raise his hand just to start the evening off, right? Oh yeah, I remember you. I am watching you. Huh?
What are you drawing with?
Are you Al?
Al, yes.
That's the abbreviated form of April.
I know, see, right? It's the first and the last name. It's my initials, actually, A-L, so. Okay, I can tell you're going to give me a hard time tonight. You are. So I know that Al was here a couple of weeks ago. Raise your hands. Some of you look familiar. How many of you were here 2 weeks ago? Okay, so the rest, how many were not here? Let me ask that. Okay, and so was there just not a better choice tonight, or did you hear how fantastic I was, or you're curious what I'm going to talk about? So, there's a couple of different choices there. But tonight, we are going to talk about truth, lies, and sex offenders, which is kind of a different topic probably for your normal Wednesday night. But a couple of weeks ago, we talked about some different things about child abuse and recognizing abuse and things that you could do with your kids. And for those of you that weren't here, we're going to kind of talk about that again. And I will tell you that this program is usually an hour and a half. The good news is I cut it down, so don't raise your eyebrows. Saw that? I cut it down, but we might go a hair over. So if you need to go, that's okay. You will not hurt my feelings. Okay? Okay. So we're going to talk about truth, lies, and sex offenders. So I think that it's super important that the reason that you're here, in case you're wondering, why did I show up tonight, or you just got blown in the door, I'm not sure which it is, but knowing how sex offenders think, act, and operate is the best protection that you have, to open your eyes to that. And so I will tell you that we are going to go down a path, and hopefully I will then draw you back out of that path. But we are going to talk about techniques that sex offenders use to fool you as adults and to fool your children. And some of it, what I've heard is that it can be surprising, and it can it'll probably creep you out how much effort they put into it, really. So hopefully I'm going to take you back out of that and you won't walk out of here with the creepy crawlies. So we're going to run through some facts real fast. What do you think the most common age sexual abuse begins is? For the victim, yes. Just throw out some things. 2, 4, 3. 3 is the answer. 3 years old is the average age that sexual abuse begins. Now see, I redid this and I put the answer up here. So 1 in 4 children, yes. 1 in 4 children, see, it's always good to have a gimme. 1 in 4 children will be sexually abused by the age of 18. So that's 25% chance that that's going to happen. What percentage of sexual assault victims report the abuse? What do you guys think? 15. 10%. 10% of sexual assault victims report as children. Yes.
Define sexual abuse.
Oh yes, I can do that. And that's a really good question, because a lot of times people think, I think of sexual abuse, do you guys remember in school when you had the number line? And you had like the 0 and you had the negative numbers and the positive numbers? Well, what I find a lot of times is that parents address this side of the sexual abuse line. And this side is when children are touched, or someone is touching the child, or they're making the child touch them, or there's some type of penetration, things like that. So a lot of times you'll talk to your kids about the touching part. But there's this other part over here that sometimes we don't address. And especially in the society that we have today, we need to address this part, because this part leads to this part. This is a grooming part. So many times what sex offenders will do is they will introduce pornography. They will introduce naked pictures. And I'm not talking about pornography necessarily where there's even sexual acts in the pornography, but they may just introduce a naked picture. and to see with that child's curiosity what they'll ask about it, they will try to spark a child's natural curiosity about the opposite sex body, the body of the opposite sex, or about their own body. So they'll introduce this, or they'll expose themselves, and they'll do it in a way that it's not obvious. So you're not like being flashed on the street. You know, obviously, that that's unusual, but they may get out of the shower and happen to walk through the living room when they know the child's there and go, oh, and act surprised, like I didn't know you were here. So they'll try to see what the child will do, how much they'll tell, and gently push to increase that so that they are more exposed to it. So all of that is considered sexual abuse. Does that answer your question? Okay, perfect. On average, people who molest children have how many victims, do you think? 5? Huh? 10? Okay. Did you say 1? Okay. At one, in their lifetime. How about we say in their lifetime? 300s? On average, in their lifetime, 75 to 150. 75 to 150 victims. So it's really important that when we talked about reporting is really important. But we're going to talk about the things that sex offenders do so you don't report. Okay? All right. So, would you know if there's sex offenders in your neighborhood? You think so? If they're registered, true. So, I want to play this video for you, and it's basically, you're going to hear their voices, and you're going to see what they did, and they're going to tell you things as we're going along.
I'm Mike. I'm guilty of possession of child pornography. 1999.
Is that loud enough?
Downloaded some child pornography. I got 10 years probation and $10,000 fine, registration for life. So
I'm Wayne, and I'm guilty of molesting my step-granddaughter by fondling her breast and inserting my finger in her vagina.
My name is Jacob. I am guilty of solicitation of a minor. Solicited a 13-year-old girl over the internet for purposes of sexual activities. Of course, of my probation, disclosed that I had molested my son and got an indecency charge with that, which happened 11 years ago, and serving a concurrent 10-year probation for that as well.
My name is Rick. I'm here on an indecent exposure charge. It's a second offense. My first was deferred. 2 years probation on this one. I would get naked, run around my apartment, masturbate on my balcony.
I'm Rick. I'm guilty of touching my granddaughter in her vagina.
my name is Ray. I'm a registered sex offender because I allowed myself to become sexually involved in a relationship with a 16-year-old male.
I'm Song. I'm here for indecency with child sexual contact with my ex-girlfriend who was 15. I was 24 at the time.
I'm Dwayne. I'm guilty of indecency with a child by contact. I did do it. I got 10 years deferred adjudicated probation for it.
I'm Amber. I'm guilty of indecency with a child. My victim was 14. I got 8 years deferred probation, messed up, and got 6 years TDC.
I'm guilty of indecency with a child. I got pleaded to 2 counts of it. I met a girl on a phone sex line, and I'm guilty of having sex with her.
My name's Billy. I'm here for indecency with a child by sexual contact. I wrote my stepdaughter's butt.
My name's Daniel. I'm guilty of aggravated rape against my 4-year-old daughter.
My name's Gary. I'm guilty of indecency of the child by contact for having intercourse with a 14-year-old girl on 2 separate occasions, and had a second charge several years later of sexual assault on a 27-year-old female.
My name is Travis. I was charged with indecency with a child for touching her on the vagina. I did touch her on the vagina. I received a plea bargain for injury to a child and 10 years probation.
I'm guilty of indecency with a child by contact. I've had an erection on more than 3 occasions with my classroom, my 7th grade girls.
So as you can see from that clip, anyone can be a sex offender. It crosses genders, it crosses race, it crosses socioeconomic status, it crosses it all. And so we'll be talking, to bring you back out of this, we'll be talking about what you can do, what you can do with your children, how you can better prepare yourself. So the U.S. Department of Justice estimates that on average there's one child molester per square mile in the United States. Basically, I didn't know what a square mile was, so for those of you who are also see, that doesn't help me. So I'm going to put it in girl terms, okay? Maybe yeah. So that's like from 34th to 45th, Georgia to Bell. That's a square mile. See, there you go. So that helped me to like picture how many places that was. Now, we have to also realize that there, of course, are more populated areas. So in New York, you know, there's probably 10 every square mile. But here in Texas, it may not be as much as this because we have a lot of blank land where nobody resides. And what percentage of the time is the offender someone that the family knows and trusts? And if you were here last week, you know this. 99% of the time. So only 1% of the time is it a stranger. The average age of first offense for sex offenders is what age? When do they begin? 12? Any other age? It's actually 14. The average age that they begin is 14. Again, that's averages, so it could be younger, could be older. And what do you think is the average age a sex offender is caught? 25, 30? Average age they're caught is 34. It's the average age, so that's 20 years of offending. And that's how that number can be 75 to 150. All right, so many of you probably know this, and I'm going to give you a handout, but the easiest thing to do instead of this big long thing is just type in Texas Sex Offender Registry. But again, those are the ones that you're going to know about. But it's handy. You can look it up, and it'll tell you the age of their victims. It will tell you their risk, if they're a high risk, low risk, that kind of thing. Because remember, not everyone on Texas Sex Offender Registry is child related. They're also adult sex offenders, like their victims were adults. Okay, so do you ever wonder how sex offenders choose their victims? No, you've never thought about it. I'm not going there. Okay, well, I'm taking you there. We're fixing to walk down that path. So here's the thing. This is what we're going to talk about, the different places. So in the community or institution, a sex offender looks for a place where they are not known. So that's why you see many times a sex offender will move. If someone approaches them, so let's say, because this happens, that someone is aware or thinks that something might be going on, and they confront the offender, or they start saying, you know, we've just noticed that you are, you kind of have children sit on your lap, and it's just causing people to be concerned. That sex offender will not be there much longer. They will know that you're kind of onto them and probably watching them, and they will move on. And where you see this, honestly, a lot of times is in church communities. Because churches, we're targeted as Christians for being willing to be forgiving, to offer grace. But also, we don't have a huge level of supervision a lot of times in churches. I know in the church that I grew up, I mean, we were hiding all over the place. In this church, there would be great hiding place. I mean, hide and go seek would be the bomb here. And that would be a prime target, because here's the thing that a sex offender will do. A sex offender could be a teenager. A sex offender could be an adult. But they'll be the ones that are going, yeah, I'll play hide and go seek. The thing is that some normal adults, like me, I like to play hide and go seek, and I would probably do that too. So it's hard to tell because they're going to exhibit some of the normal behaviors. Al, do you like to play hide and go seek? I knew that about you. Are you you this welcoming to most people? Okay. So they look for a setting that provides access to children where they're not going to be as supervised. And that's why many times, let's say, because we're in a church, so let's talk about churches, but you want to have Sunday school rooms where there's 2 adults present. You're not leaving children unsupervised, or someone, you know, the teacher that always volunteers to take the child to the bathroom, things like that. I mean, you just have to be careful about those things. I interviewed a 5-year-old boy, and I didn't tell you guys who I was. I'm the executive director for the Bridge. For those of you that weren't here last time, I'm assuming that you just know me. Isn't that famous? I've worked at the Bridge for about 21 years, and part of my job, before I was the executive director, is I interviewed children about these types of things. So one boy that I interviewed was around 7. And what his parents noticed, they noticed a change in his behavior. Always had wanted to go to church. Always wanted to, couldn't wait to get there, fun time. And that behavior started to change. And it progressively got super defiant, where finally it came to, your kids have probably done this, hopefully not at church, but where they put all 4 legs on the side of the door and they're like, I'm not going in there. So that's what this little boy did. And they were like, you've got to tell us what's going on. Why don't you want to go to church? And that little boy finally had the courage to tell. And he told about a teenage boy who he hung around with, and he hung around with in their Sunday school room, and would take him to the bathroom, and that's where he would molest him. So when you notice changes in your kid's behavior, you gotta ask why. Doesn't mean that this is going on, that something's going on. It could be that they're being bullied somewhere. It could be that they're being made fun of. There could be a scary dog on the way home from school. But it's something. And it's our job as parents to find out why. Why are they doing that? For families, they will choose single-parent homes. They'll look for homes that are stressed. So even it could be a family where both parents are there, but maybe the dad works a lot, and so this child doesn't is left alone, or the parent is stressed, and they will offer to help. They will first gain the trust of you as adults before they move on to your parents. Move on to your children. That's what they will do. They will gain your trust first, and then they will move on to your children. They will look for those vulnerabilities. They will look for prior victimization of parents. Do you wonder how they might find that out? How am I going to find out if one of the parents has been sexually abused before? How would you find that out? Any ideas? So, this is one of those paths I'm going to take you on. How many of you like to watch CSI, SVU, Lifetime? Oh, I knew! Oprah? Anybody? Okay, you're not going to admit it, but if you ever watched any of those shows, many times there is sexual abuse is the topic of those shows. So picture this. And I don't mean to pick on guys, because there are female sex offenders, but it's about 5%. So most of the time I am going to, and hopefully not turn all you guys off, but I'm going to refer to them as a he. So let's say that I'm a single mom, and I'm at home and I'm watching SVU, and I'm with my new boyfriend. We've been dating for a year. Are you saying what's SVU? Special Victims Unit. It's like the crime. It's like the Law and Order. Yeah, Law and Order SVU. So it's Special Victims Unit, something like that. But it's usually targeted against crimes against persons. Sorry, you obviously don't watch it. So I'm sitting there with my boyfriend that I've had for about a year, and the topic is sexual abuse. And me, as I'm going to switch roles a couple of different times, so I'm a sex offender now. And I say, you know, it is really tough for me to watch shows like this. Now I'm the girlfriend, and I'm over here, and I've been a victim of sexual abuse, but I haven't told my boyfriend that. But when you've been a victim of sexual abuse, it kind of makes up a core piece of why you are. And you look for that opportunity to share that with someone that you love, just so they know that that's happened and that's part of your past. So he makes this disclosure, and I say, well, why? Why are these shows hard for you? And to me, as a sex offender, I'm going to say, well, you know, when I was younger, that happened to my little sister. And it's, you know, I always felt like I should have protected her. It's just really hard for me to watch this. I have no tolerance for people who do stuff like that. Me, as a prior sexual abuse victim, is the perfect opening for me to say, oh my gosh, I've been wanting to tell you. That happened to me when I was younger too. Sex offender will be very understanding, will want to hear all about it. The reason that he wants to hear all about it is to then turn your victimization back on you. Many times will abuse your child the same way that you were abused. Then when you confront him on it, he will say, I'm so sorry that I did anything that made you think that, but that's not me. And you didn't get the help that you needed back then, and so it's just bringing up those old feelings, and that's why you're seeing things that really aren't there. And me as a sexual abuse victim is going to go, I haven't worked all the way through it. It still is impacting you, because it probably is. So he's telling the truth, except he's not admitting that he did that. So, you see how that could potentially happen? And bam, I know about the prior victimization. Questions about that? Are y'all with me or you creeped out? Okay, so let's talk about children. Sex offenders will target children who are needy for adult attention and affection. They oftentimes may have a lower level of adult supervision. It doesn't mean that parents are necessarily neglecting them. It just means that they're doing a job and they have 2 other kids in the home, and this is the oldest one, so they expect them to kind of entertain themselves. So it's normal stuff that happens, but that's who they're going to target. They're also going to target children who have had prior victimization. We have multiple children who come through the bridge for different perpetrators. This does happen. They're victimized by one person, and then they're victimized again. Same situation happens. They learn about it from the parent. The parent shares this information with them. Same scenario. And they'll also look for children that are less believable. You're like, what does that mean? Well, how many of you had children? Okay. How many of you, your children have lied to you? I know! Say it isn't so. April and I never did that, but the rest of you might have children that way. But the thing is that kids lie, kids make up stories, kids fantasize. They're going to do that. And sometimes you have a child who may be more troubled, or may have a history of depression, or may have some type of the ADHD kid, all of those things, but that's who they may target. Because they're going to play on that, and they're going to see that child is, you may think that they're less believable. What I find in my experience of interviewing over 5,000 children is I can tell you about 10 children that actually intentionally lied about their sexual abuse. And when they lied, rarely did they name a person. It would often be an older child, and they would say, I was at my friend's house, somebody came in, this is what they did, but I don't know who it was. So they don't name people. They don't accuse someone that they know. A lot, they just don't. If they're making it up. Okay, so let's talk about how a sex offender will start to deceive you. What's going to happen? Here. Okay. It's teasing.
The procedures.
Oh, no, there it is. He's running to get the volume.
Child to go along with it, or at least not protest. exist. And so grooming is all those procedures to make the child liable, so to speak.
I would just be friendly, but have, you know, I had them come over to have some brownies, give them some brownies and let them have colors and crayons and do some artwork. And, you know, first it starts out that way.
And the grooming can be all sorts of things. The individual or the predator could start off by finding opportunities to spend time with the child that would be in excess of what you'd reasonably expect of someone who knew the mother only that period. Offer to do babysitting, offer to watch the kids when the mother goes runs an errand. Offers to take the child to go do an activity. And at that point just gets friendly with the child, gets to know the child.
I was groomed as a child. My abusers they weren't strangers. They were people close to me. They were people that I trusted, people that my family liked, people that were important people in my life. They were close to me.
It starts very slow. People have an idea that it's on sexual abuse. They're grabbed off the street and stolen away, and it's physically violent. For most people like me, it's a very gradual process. The pedophile gets to know the child. Pedophiles are patient. They take their time. They develop a relationship. And, you know, they earn the trust of the child. They earn the trust of the family.
I think that a perpetrator, when they start to groom a child, they want to see how far that they can take it and then they will slowly progress into doing different things and seeing how far they can go and seeing if the child will disclose or tell.
A pedophile or predator will trap the child by, okay, we're smoking, we're drinking. We saw this a lot with the Boy Scouts. So then it's, you know, you tell. I'll tell them you're smoking dope, and they're going to see it if I test you for drugs. So how can I trap these children in any way, shape, or form that I can? And it's a constant path of lies and deceit that starts so easily that children can't pick it up. And that's why they fall victim so quickly to a pedophile.
Don't report to that number. That's what you call it. Yes. I bet you wish you were in Florida, especially, no? Oh, the wind today, really? Oh, gators. It's not like they're hanging out in your bathtub. So here's the thing. Here's a portrait of a sex offender. So you can chunk out the trench coat. You can chunk out the creepy thing. It's someone who is many times a pillar in the community. They're polite. They're well liked. They really actually don't give you the creep factor. They are nice. They try to help you. They actually portray a lot of good Christian qualities because they want you to trust them. So that's what they're going to do. They will verbalize a hatred toward other sex offenders. Because if you're sitting there talking to somebody and they're going, I just think they need more leniency, you're going to go, that doesn't sound right. For the most part, that's what you're going to say. And you're going to plan, or they are going to plan for a disclosure and they're going to practice the response. So here's the thing. Before a sex offender ever touches your child, they are going to have an alibi in place, a reasonable explanation for why they did something or why that was the situation or how it could be misinterpreted. They're going to have that in place and they're going to plan for your confrontation so that they can look you in the eye and say, there is no way I would do that. Because if I sit there and you confront me and I'm going, well, everybody knows if you don't look at somebody, then you're lying. So they're going to plan for this because they have a lot riding on this. If you don't believe them, they're going to prison. They're going to have a lot of difficult things come into their life. So this is a big thing that they're going to practice for this. If a child reports, they're going to talk the person out of reporting. They're going to, again, have that alibi in place. And they're going to say, this didn't happen. We were only wrestling. I was going in to tuck them in. And they may actually admit to what they did. They may have said, I may have touched them on their privates, but I was just, pulling the covers up. It was certainly not what, I just wouldn't do that to kids. I can't believe that you would even think that I would do that. That's the kind of reaction that they're going to have. And we, as a body of the community, you don't want to think that people are sex offenders. It's, for most of you, if someone accused you of being a sex offender, that would be the worst thing that they could actually call you. And so it's very difficult to confront someone on that. And maybe not for some of you, but for some of you it would be very difficult. They will deny with an element of truth, which is what we talked about. They will be nice, likable, well-spoken. They'll be all those things. So they will deceive you, not only with those things, but they will first gain your trust. They will do some grooming in front of you. So how will they groom my child in front of me? They will have a child come sit on my lap, and they'll wrestle with the child. They'll tickle the child. They'll do all of those things right in front of you. Now, here's the thing. Here's the hard part. Your kid's going to get tickled by adults, okay? And they may wrestle with adults that you trust, and it doesn't mean that you just freak out. That's the hard part. And that's why sex offenders choose those behaviors, because a lot of times that's kind of normal. That's normal behavior. I mean, I tickle my nieces. That's something that you do. So this is a quote from a sex offender. I do some of those things in front of other adults or the kids' parents just to get everybody comfortable with my interactions with their children. They will molest a child right under your nose. They will do it with you in the room or in the car. I know because I've interviewed lots of kids that way. How many of you have a movie night with your kids? Where you all rent a movie on TV and you sit in the living room and everybody has their place and you have a couch and I always have my blanket. That's what I have. Well, I've heard children tell me that will happen. Their parents will be on one couch. They will be on the couch with the sex offender, and they'll have a blanket, and the sex offender will molest them, touch them, while the parents are in the room. What a child thinks, let's get into the mind of a child. What a child thinks is that you know that it's going on because you're right there. How many times did your parents know stuff and they weren't even right there? You think that your parents are all knowing. So they think that. And if the child asks or questions later the perpetrator and say, I don't think that's okay. They're going to say, you remember that time we were watching the movie and your parents were right there. They're okay with it. They know. You don't know. But they tell the child that, because you know what kids don't think? Kids don't think that adults lie. They don't think that. They think that you're telling them the truth. They think that you have their best interests. So they believe adults. If they're caught, again, they will deny, say it was an accident, and they will apologize. Sex offenders deceive children by gaining the trust of the child. The number one thing that sex offenders say that they will do to groom children is that they will listen. Child comes and wants to tell about their day or tell about their soccer game. Guess what? They sit down and they listen. They say, tell me all about it. And they ask questions and they actually engage in this conversation with the child. That's the number one thing they do. All sex offenders will say, I listen. I give that child my undivided attention. Because we know as parents, a lot of times that's not possible. We're trying to make dinner. We're trying to get the other kids ready. We're doing a bath. We may not give undivided attention. They'll encourage or catch the child breaking the rules. The video referred to this. So she said it more like a teenager, if they were caught smoking or drinking. The thing is is that I told you, sex offenders will usually be in your home. They know your family rules. So one of my rules when we were growing up is I could only have 1 Coke a day. Okay, that was a rule. So if there was a sex offender in my home, and let's say my mom wasn't there, or, I mean, even if it was my brother or whatever, or we were at a softball game, and you're like, I already had a Coke today, and they would go, you can have another Coke. I won't tell anyone. So they get me to confide, and they get me to break a rule. Now, a Coke thing is not super severe, but in a child's mind, I'm going to get in trouble. And that's all I think, is I'm going to get in trouble. So then, when this sex offender progresses into abuse, they're going to say, and I say, I'm going to tell. I don't like this, and I'm going to talk to my mom, and they're going to go, you tell. I'm going to tell about all the times that you've had extra Cokes, or let you watch an R-rated movie, and I know I wasn't supposed to. They will encourage that child to break the rules so that they will then use that against the child. And for a child, young child, old child, I don't want to be in trouble. That is truly the mind of kids. They don't want to be in trouble. They don't equate it into that's a way greater offense and I'm not going to care about the Cokes. They're going to equate it with I'm going to be in trouble and I did something wrong or I caused this. I should have stopped it, but I did these other things wrong. Does that make sense? They will ask the child for advice. Here's the thing. When you're teaching about the stranger danger stuff, which we talked about last time, you teach your kids, adults don't come to kids for help. Adults go to adults for help. Okay? So, the same thing for advice. But how great does your kid feel when you go, you know, what do you think of this wall color? And they're like, you know, they'll perk up, they like to give you their opinion, they like to give you their advice. This is what a sex offender will do. A sex offender will also confide in the child. We see this a lot of times with older victims. So they will tell. So let's say we have a teenager who's being abused by their stepfather. And the stepfather will confide adult things to that child. They'll talk about the fights that they had with their mom and just say, you're so much more understanding than that. You're so much prettier than your mom. You're all these things, and it puts that child in the mom place. They make the abuse a game. This is very effective with younger children. They'll make it a game. Kids don't know. Kids always want to play a game. You want to play a game? I have never played this game with anyone else, but it is so much fun. And they're like, yeah, I want to play a different game. Excuse me. They will normalize sexual curiosity and behaviors. They will try to spark that child's curiosity, and here's the thing. If you guys don't know this already, kids are going to be curious. They're going to be curious about their bodies. They're going to be curious about the opposite sex's bodies. They're going to be curious about sex. And if you don't answer those questions or you're not provoking those conversations and not shying away from them, someone will answer those questions. And it may not be a sex offender. It may be someone who has totally inaccurate information. But they will find the answer somewhere. So you have to have those conversations. So let's talk about what can be done to make children safer. We're doing so good on time. Does anybody have any questions? Am I talking a mile a minute? Are y'all catching it? Y'all doing okay? Okay. So here's the thing. Okay, so we took you a little bit. We dived down in the tunnel. We're in the dark depths, and we're going to pull back out. Because now we're going to find about what you can do and how you can make this problem better. Okay, so that's important. But I want you to first hear about, this video is really good.
I think one of the important things to understand about sex abuse is that children decide who they're going to tell. They tell somebody who they think is going to believe them, but also who will understand them. It's important to understand that some children won't tell parents. Why? Not because you don't have a close relationship, but they're worried about bothering their mom. My mom's going to be so upset about it that they have to tell somebody.
The first time I tried to disclose, it was actually with a neighbor. I told her, and what what do you do when somebody touches you? And I saw her face, like she gave me this look like, oh my God. So, that immediately put up a barrier for me. I said, yeah. She got scared, so I also got scared just by her reaction. But I think with her reaction, she also was telling me, don't tell me anymore.
And I would say, parents out there, you know that what you're willing to hear, your children will talk to you. If they know that you cannot hear the terrible, difficult things, they will tell you. And if a child discloses to you, be calm, thank you enough for telling me, and respond with an acknowledgement that it took a lot of courage for the child to tell you. Let the child know that he or she is not the only person this has ever happened to. Contain your anger, contain your upset, be as calm as you possibly can. Listen with an open mind and a heart. Tell the child that you believe him or her. Do not make promises you can't keep. Don't tell the child everything's going to be better because you don't know that initially it is going to be better. Ultimately, you believe it will be better, but disclosing is hard.
I think when you hear disclosure from your child, the hardest thing to do is not react, because you don't want them to think what they're telling you is shocking you or what they did was wrong. It's never the child's fault. It's always the adult's fault that abused them. So you need to listen. You need to not put words in their mouth. You need to nurture them, make them feel okay, tell them they didn't do anything wrong.
That video is super great because it summarizes everything that now I'm going to tell you. So, last couple of weeks ago we talked about the things to teach your child. And the number one thing we said was to teach your child names for your private part. Do you guys remember this? Do you remember this, Al? We talked to you specifically about what to name your private part. Do you remember? So we said, and here's the thing, for those of you that weren't here, my rules for this are, you guys remember? Name in a word commonly understood for private places, and a word that you're comfortable with. So if you are totally uncomfortable with the anatomically correct names and you flush or blush or look down or can't talk to your child without and use those words comfortably, then don't use them. Because the most important thing is that you talk to your child and they establish a level of comfort to come to you and ask you about those things. So, teach them names. Teach them they have the right to say no when it comes to what? Do you guys remember? That's what? Hugs, yes. Hugs, kisses, things like that. This is super important. I just saw this happen at my church last week. That there's a little girl and her dad was there and he's like, okay, give Grandpa so-and-so, give him a hug. And she was like, she did that thing, you know. And Grandpa, wise man that he is, a friend of mine, said, that's okay. Sat back down. It's no big deal. Do not let your child say, I don't want to hug you. Because they need the right to say who hugs, touches, kisses their body. That's okay. You got to back them up on that as a parent and go, that's okay. Maybe next time. Or teach them high five things. Usually kids really like high five things. It's better than hugging. And to tell someone. So we talked about make a list with your child of who they can tell and realize that you as parents, just like the guy said on the video, they don't tell you because they don't want to hurt you. That's why they don't tell you. So you need to give your children other people to tell. What I learned from this video too, because I just picked out that video just for you guys, you're the first person I've ever shown it to. So what I learned from this too is that if your child makes this list, and on this list you're like, I'm thinking that person's going to freak out if my child ever tells them something, maybe you want to talk to them and say, okay, I want you to know that my child and I have been having conversations about who they could tell if someone, did something that made them feel uncomfortable. And they said that they trusted you enough to do that. How are you going to respond? Because that the neighbor's response shut her down. and she didn't tell again for a long time. So you might want to warn them about that. I don't think that would. Yeah. I would start doing this probably around 5. And you know, something that we talked about last week now, teaching them names for their private parts, 3. So when you're teaching them eyes, nose, mouth, don't skip to the toes. Cover them off. It'll be great therapy for you and prepare you. So, but when you're making a list, you know, that's what I said, is look for those opportunities. You don't want to necessarily talk to your kid every week, okay? But you look for those opportunities when it comes on the news. If you're watching Oprah, you just came to this class, and it's a perfect time to go, you know, while you were doing whatever they were doing at church, guess what I was listening to? And so there's some things that I want to talk about with you, and I want to start talking about this conversation. Eventually, what I would like to see is your kids roll their eyes and go, oh my gosh, I know I'm supposed to tell this person. Someone ever makes me feel uncomfortable. But if you have teenagers, a great way to approach teenagers, if you're like, they're going to just go, Mom or Dad, talk to them about what would you do if a friend came and told you. Because the number one person that a teenager tells is their friend. And their friend needs to know that you need to come and tell me. So talk to your teenagers about that and say, if your friend ever comes to you, what would you do? And do you know that I would want to know about that, because we need to help your friend. Even if your friend says, I don't want you to tell anybody, that's not going to help them. It's not going to help that abuse to stop.
Hey, April?
Yeah.
I was wondering, on the tell someone maybe listen to your child, and then you were talking about going to that person and mentioning to them. Do you think it'd also be wise to maybe make sure that person doesn't initiate those conversations with your kid?
Yeah, that's really good. They don't need to talk. They don't need to go, hey, is something going on? Unless, I would say it depends on who it is. You know, if it's your best friend and they hang out with their best friend a lot, let's say that your best friend is tuning in on some behaviors. I would hope they would come to you, but they might say, hey, you've been, and it could be, your grades are not, you know, what they used to be at school. What's going on with that? It could be that, you know, noticing something, or sometimes you have to realize as a parent, maybe that is the person who needs to bring it up because they're not going to tell you. So it needs to be just kind of a collaboration. I wouldn't say they couldn't ever ask questions. I would say they have to be very careful if they're going to jump right in and go, hey, is somebody touching you? I would recommend that doesn't happen. But if they're noticing a behavior, to address the behavior. Good question. Okay, so what fills in this blank? Provide what? Yes, provide supervision. Oh, your kids aren't going to like me for this, but they should not have internet access in their room. They should not have a computer in their room. I realize they're going to have their phone. You need to have passwords to their phone. You need to be checking their texts. You need to check their photos. You have got to monitor that, because sexting is rampant. Inappropriate conversations are rampant. And if you don't know who that person is texting, you should definitely be asking questions about who that person is, because you should know whoever your child's receiving text from. Same thing about their Facebook page. You should be monitoring their Facebook page. You should be looking at their friend list. If you don't know who that friend is, you need to find out. Who is this person? How do you know? Because they, you know, I don't think it's as much this way anymore, but Facebook used to be all about how many friends you had. They need to make sure that their friends are really their friends. Not some acquaintance, not someone that you just got to really monitor that. Communicate your child and encourage questions. You're encouraging questions. I want you to ask me if you have any questions about stuff that's going on, or, you know, if you're having the sex talk. I want you to come talk to me if you have questions, because I'll tell you the truth. I may not have the answer right then. I may have to look it up. But I want you to come to me. Lastly, believe your child, of course, if they disclose abuse. Lastly on this slide. Nope, I'm hitting the wrong button. I'm not even using the clicker. You didn't yell at me. Okay, hold on. Okay. I want you to listen to your own intuitions. Really important. ask these questions. Does this person have children of their own? Does this person have adult friends or partners? Does this person spend a lot of time with children, especially children of a certain age or gender? So many times sex offenders will target a certain age or a certain gender. Does this person seek out alone time? Does this person engage in activities which encourage physical contact? Basically, you just have to be aware. I know when I grew up, my mom never let me go to spend the night at somebody's house until she met their parents. Oh my gosh, you know what a big pain that was? And then after a few years after I had this job, I went, oh, thanks, Mom. I appreciate that. I'm not here. I was doing so good earlier. And now I'm shit. Okay. If your child is abused, remain calm. Most important thing, and we talked about this last week. Your child, you think something's going on. It could be that they just don't like somebody. But if you think something's going on, sit down and color. Give them stuff to color. Even your teenagers, doodle with them, something. So it's not this intense face-to-face contact where if they tell you something that you really didn't want to hear, you're going to go, or you're going to kill somebody. You. Ow would be a killer too.
We good out.
You want to be doing something so that you don't have that nonverbal reaction because it's going to be there. It's going to be there. And you have to, if it does happen, doesn't mean it's all lost. You just say, honey, I'm really sorry. I didn't want that to happen, and it's upsetting me. It's upsetting to me. But I'm so glad you told me. I'm so glad you had the courage to tell me because I want to know that. So even if you're crying, it's okay. If you're polishing your gun, it's not.
It's already polished.
Okay. Because here's the thing. Kids don't tell dads. Do you know why they don't tell you? Because you're going to kill somebody. And let's remember who our perpetrators are. 99% of the time, someone's child and you know, love, and trust. They don't want Uncle Joe to be killed. They really don't. They don't even want to hear that he's going to go to jail because that child feels that. They feel like they did something to send it. All you need to say is, I'm glad you told me, and I'm going to make sure you're safe. I believe you. The number one thing that helps children to recover from this is belief by their parents. Number one thing. Absolute number one thing, and they will be able to recover from this if they know that you believe them. And you, not just once, but you have to reinforce it. You have to say, I'm really glad you told. After every step that you may go through, I'm glad that you told. I know it may seem like we're in a lot of pain, but it's just because I hurt for you and I wanted to protect you. I'm glad you told. They need that reassurance. Okay. We are past time. I have handouts, which the lovely April will help me with. Last time we gave you, I didn't take from me, I gave you most of them. I have it. Okay, so I think there's one there, or there. Do you guys have questions? Yes.
You mentioned that a lot of times the abuse happens right underneath the parents' nose, basically. And you also mentioned about remaining calm.
Yes.
If a parent witnesses or becomes aware of this in the situation, how do you deal with that?
That is a really hard question.
Because I mean, you talk about this stuff.
You want the professional opinion?
In my mind, and all of mine in jail.
The professional opinion. I'm not saying that this is doable. I'm saying that the professional opinion. I didn't get half of my side. Sorry. And if we run out, I have more. Are we running out? Okay. Oh no, that's fine. So my professional opinion is don't freak out in front of the child. Just say, Susie, I need you to go hang out in your room for a second, okay? And then you can beat the crap out of it. No. And basically, you just need to say, the most ideal thing is to act as normal as possible and not alert them. That's probably not realistic. But the least amount of time, let them try and act like you believe them. Because the more warning they have and they think that you're going to report, they're going to go destroy evidence. Or they're going to come up with their alibi, or they're going to do things. So if you're capable of superhuman strength, you calmly just, break that situation up and say, hey, Susie, I need you to come in here for a minute, and Mom needs your help in the kitchen. And then you may talk to that guy, and then you may say, we just got a phone call, and we're going to have to head over to the hospital. We had somebody, it's always good to have that plan in place so that I don't think, I'm a horrible liar, honestly, and it's like I can't think of a lie if I'm supposed to. If I plan it, I'm pretty good. So, who else does that? That's a right? So I would have that in place. And then, if they say, I don't know what you think, if they start going, I don't know what you think happened, you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And then you call and report it to the police as soon as possible.